The iron lattice of the Eiffel Tower rose into the clouds, casting sharp shadows over the pavement. Kidow stood at the center of the plaza, head tilted back, watching the structure vanish into the mist. He stepped away from the crowd, his paws clicking against the stone as he tracked the scent of butter and roasted beans toward a nearby cafe. The heavy wooden door creaked open, admitting him into a room filled with the clatter of porcelain and low, rhythmic chatter. He navigated the maze of chair legs and discarded napkins, ignoring the confused glances of patrons as he made a beeline for the counter. He vaulted onto the service surface, his claws gripping the polished mahogany. The waiter stopped mid-pour, a carafe of water hovering in the air. Kidow fixed his gaze on the man, his whiskers twitching as he opened his mouth. A sharp, high-pitched meow echoed through the quiet shop. Cutting through the silence of the room, the waiter blinked. The air hung thick with the weight of the moment. Kidow did not move. He simply waited for his order, his tail flicking with misplaced confidence. The cafe door swung shut behind him, leaving Kidow in the crisp air of the park. He scanned the grass, eyes locking onto a plump pigeon pecking at a stray crumb. He lowered his belly to the dirt, tail twitching in a slow, rhythmic arc. He launched himself forward in a blur of motion. The pigeon did not panic. It hopped aside with surgical precision, its wing clipping Kidow's head as it took flight. Kidow skidded to a halt, ears flattened, but the bird was already gaining altitude. Clutching a small object in its beak, Kidow tracked it, his frustration mounting with every flap of the wings. He looked away, spotting a miniature iron replica of the tower standing near a bench. He saw his chance to reclaim some height. He sprinted to the base and began his ascent, claws digging into the cold metal lattice. He climbed with speed, past the first platform, past the second, reaching for the very peak. He pulled himself up to the summit, looked down at the park, and realized he had nowhere left to go. The metal bars were too thin to grip for a descent. He shifted his weight, his back paws slipping on the slick surface. He wiggled, trying to find purchase, but the frame swayed beneath him. He was trapped. Kidow managed to scramble down from the tower and bolted toward the nearest bakery, driven by the scent of yeast. He vaulted onto a high rack, his momentum sending the entire display into a violent wobble. A dozen long loaves shifted, slid, and plummeted from the metal shelves. Kidow swiped at the crusty ends, sending the bread flying across the shop like projectiles. They thumped against the wall, skidded across the floor, and knocked over a basket of rolls. He jumped down, sliding on the slick floor and bursting out into the street market. A loose silk fabric hung from a display stand, catching his claws as he drifted past. He spun, trying to pull his paw free, but the material wound tighter around his legs. He tumbled into a pile of wooden crates, his movements jerky and uncoordinated as he tried to untangle himself. He flipped over, kicked, and rolled, only to trip over his own tail. Every attempt to stand ended in a new stumble. He lay there for a second, caught in a knot of fabric, ears twitching in annoyance. He had come looking for a snack and ended up a mess of tangled limbs. The market bustled around him, oblivious to his struggle, as he finally kicked the last of the silk away and stood up, shaking his fur with a look of pure indignation. Kidow ducked into a shop that smelled sharp, floral, and overwhelming. Rows of glass bottles lined every shelf, reflecting the overhead lights. He hopped onto a mahogany counter, drawn to a small, open crystal vial. He leaned in, his nose twitching as he inhaled the concentrated lavender scent. The air inside his nostrils began to tingle. He pulled back, his head snapping forward, and let out a sneeze so powerful it rattled the glass displays around him. The force of the blast sent him skidding backward across the polished wood, his paws sliding until he tumbled off the edge. He landed on his feet, shook his head, and darted out of the shop, eager to escape the suffocating floral haze. He rounded the corner into a quiet bistro area, his ears perking up as he caught a different scent, buttery, flaky, and warm. There, sitting abandoned on a bistro table, was a stray croissant. He did not hesitate. He scrambled up the chair, lunged for the pastry, and dragged it down to the ground. He tore into the golden, crusty layers with frantic, messy bites, scattering crumbs across the stone floor. He ignored the world around him, focused entirely on the first true victory of his day. With the last of the crumbs gone, Kidow leapt onto a plush velvet chair. He stretched his limbs long and pulled his paws underneath him, resting his chin firmly against the cushion. His gaze turned steady and heavy-lidded, surveying the bistro like a local aristocrat. Just a few feet away, a couple stood close, adjusting their stance for a photograph. They leaned in, smiling at the lens, completely unaware of the small observer watching from the chair. Kidow tensed his back muscles, calculated the distance, and launched himself into the air. He landed with surgical precision directly between them, striking a pose that filled the frame. He held the position, unmoving, as the camera shutter clicked. The couple looked down in surprise, but Kidow was already off, darting toward the edge of the terrace. He scrambled up the rough surface of a stone wall, reaching the high ledge overlooking the city square. He gripped a tiny flag in his tail and waved it back and forth against the evening sky. The sounds of the city blended into a steady, rhythmic hum beneath him. He looked out over the horizon, his movements calm and deliberate. His adventure had found its rhythm, and for the first time, he was not just passing through. He was part of the view.